Should we speed FDA approval for cancer drugs? Sounds good,
Maybe.
or does it? Well, does it give patients real or false hope? And if the drugs are new, does this mean that the patients are experiments? Does it make patients feel special to be on a new drug? If you had stage 4 cancer, would you do it as a last hope for a cure even though you knew that it would make you feel sick? These are things to think about.
It's a real challenge because we all want to have hope. We want to be able to be engaged in some kind of process that has some chance of helping us. But at the same time, look at the drugs that have been brought forth into market as it is for cancer treatment. And a lot of those drugs are taken off the market because they're brought forward too soon. And when they are, people suffer. They don't have the benefit of the small window they might have of symptom-free survival.
And when we're talking about fast tracking the drug in, we're talking about shaving 2 years off of the study.
Well, some of it's shaved off that, but I think the big thing they're trying to do is get the FDA to approve it quicker, just by putting more manpower on it, and that will help some. But the tendency still is to bring a drug to market too fast, and when we do, then we have all the problems with the side effects. Of the studies not being completely done.
Well, there's less information that's going out because it hasn't been studied for a long enough period of time, but that's good for them because then there's less negative information.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big deal. And what we're doing now is we're talking about a meeting that was done in Washington, D.C. that was between the big pharma industry with the FDA and Public Citizens Health Research Group in July of 2013 to look through to see if it's worthwhile to do this because of the safety issues and because you'd like to bring a good drug to market a lot faster because it could save a lot of lives and make people feel better.
So let's talk about the article that was in the New England Journal of Medicine about the new cancer drug for chronic lymphocytic leukemia and for lymphoma.
Right. It's called ibutranib, and it's another tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which means that what it does is it blocks the receptor site for epidermal growth factor. That may do something to slow down the rate at which cancer cells can grow.
But why would they want to fast track it if there's already 4 other ones that are similar?
Well, because it hasn't been studied in people who have had failure of the drug to cure their problem. And these are people that have no hope. So what they did was a small study on only 111 patients. They published it in the most prestigious journal they could find. Unfortunately, the New England Journal of Medicine went along with it, and I say it that way because all the medical journals have a bad reputation when it comes to publishing articles where there's conflicts of interest and where they're promoting products because they probably have a conflict of interest that has to do with the pharmaceutical company itself, doing them some kind of favor in return.
Well, too, when the pharmaceutical companies want to fast track a drug, they have to pay the FDA, don't they?
They do. And when they pay the FDA becomes dependent on that income. And you're looking at somewhere around 20% of its income is coming from pharmaceutical companies that are paying the money to bring the drug to market sooner. And of course, that gives them also financial power over the FDA because if they don't get that money, then they're short in their budget because they don't allot for it some other way.
Yeah, so they probably figure, why not just fast track it in? I mean, it's going to be
there's
making money
pressure.
it'll make money for the pharmaceutical company, makes money for the FDA, and they're thinking, well, the patient already is so sick and not, they don't know of anything else that's going to help them, so we might as well just try it anyway because they'll die anyway.
That would be a thought. I mean, that certainly has some weight. I don't know if it may not be that severe, and those are suspicions that I have too, Vicki. But at the same time, we're looking at a problem that needs to be dealt with in a different way.
Well, what about integrative oncology? Something where there's natural therapies and maybe to try some herbs and things like artemisinin and methyljasminate and vitamin C.
Well, we have to look to our National Institutes of Health there because they're not willing to fund studies for things like that. What we need are comparative studies that look at the effects of the expensive chemotherapies that often cost $150,000 a year or more, that have only marginal increase in life extension, maybe it's just a month or two, and at a cost that's prohibitive.
Well, they spend a lot of money on these studies, and they don't spend the money on the natural therapies, like for fish oil, for
Well,
example. Why are they going to spend the money on that? That's something natural. They're not going to make a lot of money off of that.
well, that just tells you again there's a conflict of interest here between the major governmental organizations, and now it's leaking down into the medical journals. When I reviewed that article in the New England Journal of Medicine, it was very confusing and hard to understand what they were reporting. Yet the language that was used promoted it big time to suggest that there was so much benefit from this drug that it should be fast tracked. Now, when we look at the things that Marcia Angel did, who was the editor in chief of the New England Journal of Medicine a few years ago, she came out, Vicki, and she was talking about how corrupt the relationship was of the pharmaceutical industry, the medical journals, and the kind of quality of articles that were coming through to be published in the major journals. When you've got big money like that that's involved, a lot of the times we're publishing things that are trash and actually dangerous because they could hurt people and give them the idea that they might get better from something that they're highly unlikely to get better from.
And then on the other hand, sometimes it is helpful. I just watched a movie recently. It was an older movie, but it had Harrison Ford in it, and he was a researcher, and he was studying this particular drug to help these children that had a genetic disease. And at the
Right.
end of the movie, of course, it saved their lives. So, oh, and there was another one too, Lorenzo's Oil. And
Right.
at the end of that movie, this patient's life was saved. So these, I think, are real stories.
Well, you'd like to think that the people who are involved with that are really just trying to do a good thing. And oftentimes it starts that way. But I wonder if the pharmaceutical industry actually paid to have those
Funded the movies.
if they're executive directors. I mean, they could have been. So when we look at fast tracking a drug, we've got to have quality control here that's really good. Because if we had a major breakthrough in a fantastic treatment for a cancer or any other disease for that matter, we would want to fast track it. But the track record of the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to chemotherapy drugs is appalling. And we don't do very well in most solid tumors. We have somebody who has stage 4 cancer, the 5-year survival rate, 2%. We're going to be treating these people with experimental drugs, people who are going to be dying anyway, with the hope of maybe a month or two, or maybe not anything at all, as it turns out in the long haul. We got to think twice. Fast tracking only if we had more people who were doing it with a interest that was high quality and not conflicted, and not where money is the bottom line.